Arata is a risless wimp whose crush was stolen from him for being a shy loser. However, his no-game life takes a turn when he discovered that he's adopted, and his 5 sisters are not related, so now he can clap them with no fear of Alabama allegations.
Nice.
In an upper-class area of Tokyo, in a mansion resides a brilliant, self-made entrepreneur, and because that man loves to clap, he has 7 children living there, all loving each other the Alabama way called the Shionji family. The oldest brother, Arata, asks his younger brother, Shion, for some tips on how to bag a baddie for him to clap, but Shion tells Arata that he can't help him. Shion asks him about the girl he likes, and Arata reminds him that he only finds her cute, not clappable. It confused Shion how Arata, the heir to the Shionji family, is unable to bag any baddie, but Arata tells him that he's having difficulty finding love because of his disbelief in destiny. Just then, their 5 sisters, Uka, Kotono, Banri, Minami, and Seiha, pop up, suspecting these 2 brothers to be talking about girls, but Shion counters, saying how Arata was actually curious about Uka's 3 sizes. It pisses her off, so Uka orders their dog to attack Arata, and when it does start biting him, the sisters tell him that it's karma for creeping on his sisters. Arata tells them how he will never be interested in his own sisters, but Seiha reminds him about the incident with Kotono. He assures them that it was a misunderstanding, and Banri supports his statement, saying how it's normal for boys like him to be curious about his own sister's plots, but Seiha warns them that sibling relationships might create taboo babies. Meanwhile, Minami believes that Arata is actually a cool dude, but when he tries to thank her, she punches him hard, saying how her reflexes are alert after playing Street Fighter, which confuses the others with how her reflexes work. Just then, Uka reminds the boys about Kotono's upcoming birthday, and while Shion can attend it, Arita tells them that he has other plans, but when Kotono asks him if he can come, Arata assures her that he will be there. On their way to school, people take notice of the sisters, saying how much of a jackpot it is for all 5 sisters to be beautiful, and that the brothers are lucky to be living in the same house with them. However, at school, Arata vents to Shion how the reality is different, as they, the brothers, are always on the receiving end of punishments compared to the sisters, and that their father always took the sisters' side. Shion understands people's idea, seeing how they get to live with Banri, who is the gentle hottie, Seiha, who is the cute genius, Minami, who is a future Olympic athlete, Uka, who is a future council president, and Kotono, who is a pure and beautiful being who needs to be protected. However, unlike how others see those girls as angels, Arata can only see them as his devilish sisters. But when Shion reminds him of his incident with Kotono, where she told Arata she liked him, Arata was forced to decline her Alabama feelings. Just then, through the window, Arata sees the girl he likes, Lala. And when Shion sees her, he understands how Arata's childhood scars from the sisters made him passive with girls. Back home, Arata is contemplating whether he should send a friend request to Lala, and it annoys him how Shion was right about him being passive with girls. Just then, Uka walks in and asks him to share his school notes with her. She thanks him as her twin for the notes, but he reminds her that they are fraternal twins. While she's writing down the notes, Arata can't help but notice her plots. And when he tells her that she's dressed to open, she tells him to control his gaze from being too Alabama. Just then, she asks him about the girl he likes, and while flustered, he reveals that it's Lala, which she recognizes. She tells him that she's in the same committee as Lala and offers to hook him up with her, but he stops her from doing so. He tells her that he has his ways of rizzing girls, saying how it's none of her business. And after hearing that, Uka gets upset and leaves the room. Meanwhile, Kotono is in her room, looking at her family picture, but she can't help but keep staring at Arata. Days heading to Kotono's birthday, Arata thinks hard about the nature of destiny, questioning what he would be if he weren't a brother to the 5 sisters. But on his thoughtful walk, he sees Lala with a man he assumes is her baby daddy, which gives Arata a heartbreak. On the weekend, fully dripped out, Arata exits his room for Kotono's birthday party, and on his way there, he runs into Uka, who compliments him on his outfit choice. Then the siblings gather around the dining table awaiting their father, but just then, an argument starts. Uka finds out how Minami lost the AirPods Uka lent her, and they start calling each other names, wishing they were never siblings. While the others can only watch, Arata has had enough and orders them to stop. He reminds them how they will always be siblings, and the others smile at him, showing approval towards his short speech. Then their father, Kaname, shows up and they start the party, but before they make a toast for Kotono's birthday, Kaname tells them that he has an announcement. To everyone's shock, Kaname informs them that they are not actually siblings, and while he will always love all of them like his own, the truth is, they are all adopted. He states that while Minami and Shion are really twins, the rest are not, and he's telling them this truth because of a promise he made to their mother years ago. He asks that they continue the party, but while dinner is being served, every single one of them is still in shock over the life-changing news they just received. Later, the siblings gather in a room, and when their maid is about to serve them tea, Banri sends her away, asking for privacy. While the others are tense, Minami is still joyful, even though her life has just changed, and they credit it to her having their father's bright personality. Uka expresses how she feels cheated, believing that their father could have said it earlier. But Seiha disagrees and thinks that Kotono's birthday was the perfect moment, as it was their father's promise to their mother. Being the oldest, they ask Banri if she remembers anything about her past when they were first adopted, and while she does recall something, she refuses to share it with them, saying how it's unimportant. She assures them all that what's important is that they love each other and that they will always be siblings. They applaud her for the speech, which lifts their mood, and they all head to bed. But while everyone is walking back to their rooms, Arata is still there, contemplating what just happened. Back in his room, Arata continues thinking about what just happened, and to get his mind off it, he goes to take a bath. He sees someone's plot armor but ignores it and goes in. However, he makes eye contact with Kotono, who's taking a bath, and after seeing each other's assets, Arata runs away, apologizing to Kotono. Instead of being upset, Kotono asks Arata as his brother to wash her back, and just like old times, he does what she asks, which she enjoys. While he tells her to scrub her own back, she admits that she likes it when he is the one who washes her back. Meanwhile, Uka is chilling in the kitchen when Shion joins her. After what just happened, Uka asks Shion if Arata said anything, saying how it's affecting Uka heavily to find out that Arata is not her fraternal twin, and Shion assures her that Arata feels the same way. As the heir to the Shiunji family, Arata has a responsibility as the big brother to all of them, but unbeknownst to them both, in the bathroom, he is getting a soft hug in the back from Kotono. Meanwhile, Shion tells Uka how, since they aren't siblings, they are all legally allowed to marry each other, and while it disgusts Uka thinking about marrying someone like Arata, she knows that Shion is telling the truth. She orders Shion to get Arata to stop staring at her plots, but Shion tries to excuse his former brother, saying how Arata is just like any hormonal young man. She then asks Shion what exactly happened between Arata and Kotono in the past, and while Shion knows what it is, he already promised to Arata to keep it a secret. But Uka tells Shion while the others like to tease Arata about that incident, they all know how Arata is not a creep who would jump his own sister. After hearing that, Shion tells Uka the truth, and to her absolute shock, she finds out how Kotono confessed her feelings for Arata, even when they were still siblings, but Shion informs her that Arata rejected Kotono's feelings, not wanting to have an Alabama-loving relationship. However, it was Kotono who tried to force Arata to love her, which ended with him on top of her, which was what the girls saw, and after they just knew how they were not actually siblings, they realized how things could get spicier than before. Back in the bathroom, Arata tries to get Kotono to get her Alabama-loving hands off him, but Kotono reminds him how, since they're not blood-related, they can be together, and even one day marry each other. She asks him if she's a bad girl, but Arata turns on his big bro mode and tells her that while they're not blood-related, he will always be his brother who will look after her until the day she marries someone. Kotono walks back to the bathtub, saying how Arata is both the kindest and meanest person he knows, and Arata exits the room, saying happy birthday, and leaving Kotono wishing that Arata responded to her feelings. Unbeknownst to Arata, when he steps out of the bathroom, someone is watching him. Then he heads to his room, thinking if Kotono did what she did because of what happened, and when he steps inside, he is greeted by Seiha, who's studying while waiting for him. Without beating around the bush, she asks him where he's been, and not wanting to tell the truth, he lies, saying that he's been walking around the house. She talks about how his room, which is the smallest among the siblings, feels like the biggest, which reminds them of when they first played rock, paper, scissors to determine who gets the biggest room, and Arata remembers how he lost. While hearing Seiha's yappings, Arata wonders what this girl wants, and in that moment, to Arata's surprise, Seiha pushes him down to the bed. She gets on top of him, saying how they have to keep it a secret, and sticks her plots to his body, which makes him get closer to her danger zone. Arata starts suspecting that Seiha is the same way as Kotono, but to his relief, Seiha says that she has no concern over him. She reveals that she saw him in the bath with Kotono, saying how she saw all of their interaction, but before he demands an explanation, he gets her off his body before his volcano explodes. Seiha tells him how she always knows about Kotono's feelings for him, but suspects that after knowing that they are not actual siblings, Kotono loses all of her restraints. She praises him for handling the situation properly, but to ensure that he won't fold to his own sister's advances, she had to make sure that he doesn't want to develop the plots with them. He asks her if she doesn't have any other ways aside from getting on top of him, and Seiha tells him that since she has no feelings for him, she doesn't see the issue in her method. She reminds him how a relationship between siblings resulted in questionable offspring, but after what happened that day, that rule doesn't apply to them anymore, and their relationship as siblings won't stop Kotono in the future from wanting Arata to expand her domains. She suggests that it might even happen between them, and while Seiha hates the idea of them bumping bellies, she knows that it's not impossible. She leaves the room saying how glad she is that Arata didn't fold, but when she gets outside, she starts questioning herself whether she folded when she was on top of him. The next morning, Arata wakes up feeling horrible after the roller coaster of emotions he endured the night before. When he steps out, his eyes are refreshed at the size of Banri and Kotono wearing a nurse outfit, and Banri informs him that it's her uniform, which she wanted to try on, but decided to try on Kotono as well. When she asks Arata if he likes how hot they look, he says no, causing Banri to cry, demanding him to say that he likes them, but he refuses and gets flustered. Then, they head to school, and joined by Xion, they watch, as other dudes ogle over their sisters, which makes Xion wonder how they would react if they knew that they're not actually siblings. Seeing how calm his sisters are makes Xion believe that girls are better liars than men, and while Arata agrees, he knows that deep down, their sisters are as affected as they are after what happened. They continue their day as school normally as if nothing ever changed between them, but after school, he realizes that things have changed and he tries to convince himself that everything hasn't. Just then, Minami pops up, and it surprises Arata to see her not in practice like usual. They walk home, and Arata praises her for her dedication to athletics, where she won multiple trophies and even got herself dubbed a future Olympian. Suddenly, she gets surrounded by her fans, asking to lick her toes and to let them drink her bathwater, and after they leave, Minami reveals that she got simping fans after she did a photo shoot wearing a men's outfit. He asks her if she wants to have fun in her day off from practice, but to his shock, Minami informs Arata that the reason she got a break from practice was because her coach told her to study, as her grades are all failing as it turns out. While Minami is the most athletic among the siblings, she's also the biggest moron. As the big bro, Arata declares that he will tutor her. He brings her to a karaoke to study in private, and while he's teaching her, he can't help but acknowledge how pretty she looks up close. When Arata is busy explaining something, he doesn't see that Minami is distracted and has picked a song for her to sing, and when she tries to solve the questions by herself, it ends with her answering everything wrong. However, she doesn't get bothered by how dumb she is and starts singing horribly, changing the lyrics of the song into about her life as a tennis athlete. And while Arata wants her to study, he can't help but enjoy the fun with his own sister. After they finish the session, they step out of the room, but Arata quickly hides from someone. And when Minami sees who it is, she sees the girl Arata has feelings for, Lala, with her man. Then, on their way home, they talk about what happened from the night before, and when Arata asks her what she thinks about it, she tells him that since they're not their father's children, they have to find out their real parents. She expresses how she feels bad for Kotono as their youngest, and Arata realizes that not only is Minami smart in some ways, but she's also a good sister. She teases Arata, saying how since he's not actually her big brother, she gets to treat him like her senpai, but Arata tells her not to say that out loud, not wanting other people to know about their weird and complicated relationship. However, Minami states that what's important is the bond they created for all their life, where he knows who he really is. So he shouldn't feel sad not being able to bag the girl he likes. He asks her how she knows about Lala, and Minami reveals that Uka told her, which makes Arata realize how much of a blabbermouth Uka is. Minami assures Arata that, as his former sister, she knows how good a person he is, so he should cheer up even though Lala didn't get to see what kind of person he is, unlike his sisters. And Arata gets touched by what she says. Back home, Minami hands a cake to Uka, which pleases her and returns her earpods, apologizing for losing them before. However, while Uka accepts her bribe, she hands Minami the earpods, telling her to keep them, and she accepts, which ends their previous fight in peace. The next morning, after waking up, Arata brushes his teeth as usual, thinking about what Kotono did the other day. When he steps out of the bathroom, he runs into her in the hallway, and they greet each other awkwardly, but Arata knows that it's because of what happened between them. Just then, Seiha pops up, roasting him for still remembering the bathroom incident, and he gets surprised by her presence. When he calls her name, she asks to be called Seiha-chan, which was what she told him to call her, and when he does call her that, she gets mildly satisfied. She asks him if he's worried about what might happen between him and Kotono, but while he's not worried as he holds no feelings for her, Seiha is worried as she felt something for him the other day. Suddenly, Minami pops up acting like she's from Street Fighter, and she talks to Arata about their gaming session from the other day, boasting about how she defeated him countless times. When she calls Arata senpai, Seiha is surprised and informs Minami that she should call someone a senpai when they are more mature and not an idiot like Arata. As the two girls are leaving, Arata wonders why he has to start his day like that. Then, at school, Arata freezes when he spots Lala and decides not to do anything. Uka pops up, mocking him, saying that he should just tell her how he loves her, and when he informs her that Lala is dating someone, she tells him that he lost all his aura after getting rejected without telling her his feelings. Just then, Uka's friends call for her, and when she hangs out with her friends, she informs them that she will be going to a sea park for Kotono's birthday. While watching her, Arata can't believe how popular Uka really is with everyone, thinking how different she is compared to the little gremlin he knows at home. Uka's friends notice Arata behind Uka, and they tell Uka how hot Arata really is, saying how they would love to date him and be his baby mama. However, Uka tells them that it's a bad idea, as she believes that Arata is a knobhead who can't bag a baddie. But while trying to undermine Arata, she can't help but praise him and ends up blushing to her own words. When they leave for class, Arata hears about the sea park trip and hopes that nothing weird will happen there. The next day, the sibling arrives at the sea park for Kotono's birthday, and when they see the place's mascot, Uka and Minami rush him, wanting to take a picture. Minami tells the others that she's getting hungry, and after hearing that, Banri asks Arata to come with her to help her get food. Moments later, the two of them get food for the others, but when they look at the mascot, they are no longer there, leaving Arata and Banri with the food. Arata tries calling for them to get their location, but when they don't answer his calls, Arata thinks that they are on a ride, and Banri has an idea. She declares that they are on a date, just the two of them, believing that they will eventually run into the others. And when Arata asks her about what they do with the food, Arata ends up having to eat all of it. Like a real couple, Banri hangs onto Arata's manly arms, and he thinks to himself how, despite Banri's older sister's charm, she always makes Arata nervous. He notices how his arms are sticking to her squishies, which makes him blush, and when he tries to remind her that he is her brother, she tells him that nobody there knows that they are siblings, so they should just enjoy the moment. When Arata blushes even harder at her plump, instead of pulling away, Banri teases him, saying how she knows that he's enjoying her plots, and he gets flustered. Banri apologizes for her plots, saying that they are too big to control, especially for a guy without experience like him.
Emotional, damn it!
As they are walking side by side, Banri tells him that he should be happy to have such a baddie beside him. While that annoys him, Arata acknowledges how all the gooning-loving men around them are staring daggers at them because of Banri. Just then, she offers him to touch her melons as a treat, and he blushes redder than a tomato, telling her to stop it. While walking up the stairs, Arata can't help but stare at the lovely view in front of him, and he falls over the stairs, which makes him feel completely embarrassed. She offers him her hand as help, and when he accepts her offer, she calls him cute. Then the two of them enjoy their private date, all the while the others are doing the same. However, Arata keeps trying to call, and after the many attempts, he manages to contact Shion, who informs him where they are. However, they are far from each other, so they decide to just have fun. The girls talk about how they know how Banri will tease Arata heavily, making him wish they were never siblings. They switch their attention to the birthday girl, Kotono, and encourage her to enjoy her birthday by riding all the rides she wants. Back with Arata, he and Banri rest after all the rides they tried. And while Banri feels hungry, Arata is not after all the food he consumed earlier. When she takes a bite of the churros, Arata notices just how precious her smile is behind her fox-like act. He gets curious about how she feels about their father's announcement, so he asks her straight up. She expresses how, while she was shocked at first, she wanted to know details, and Arata sees just how much she thought about it. She asks him what's on his mind, and when he tells her how he doesn't want their relationship as siblings to change, Banri's eyes glitter, saying how adorable he is. She rubs his head like a big sister, and it reminds her of how she always did that whenever Uka and the others made him cry. Banri tells Arata how, as their oldest sibling, she made a vow to always protect all of them, even if it means taking her life. That reminds Arata of how Banri has always been that way, protecting the others and being the coolest older sister anyone could ask for. Suddenly, a stupid little girl pops up with drinks, and she slips, causing the drink to fly towards Banri. However, Arata acts quickly and gets himself between them, which gets him wet. The stupid little girl apologizes, but Arata warmly tells her that it's okay. Banri gets worried for him, telling him that he shouldn't have done that, but just like her, Arata expresses how he will protect them all alongside her as her little brother. It rizzes up Banri, making her realize just how much of a man Arata turns out to be. Just then, the others pop up and they reunite. But when they see Arata drenched, they ask him questions on whether Banri got too excited and almost drowned him in her seafood juice. They continue to the next ride, and on their walk there, Banri asks to hold Arata's hand. When he asks why, she grabs it and pulls him with her, saying she just wants to hold his hand. That night, while they're playing around at the bridge, acting like princesses, the boys and Kotono go to the toilet. But Seiya sees this as a chance to inform the others about what happened between Kotono and Arata. After informing them, they can't believe that Kotono has the guts to cling on to Arata with her plots out. And they ask Seiya what Arata did. She informs them that, like a good brother, Arata talked Kotono down and stopped her advances. She assures them that Arata has no degenerate desires for his sisters, after Seiya herself tested it out. When they ask her how, she calmly reveals that she mounted him to see whether his heart beat, and Ding-a-ling was rising, but to her relief, neither of them did. Seiya explains that the reason she told them this is because she believes they need to do something before something happens between them. and they decide not to confront Kotono so she won't panic. Just then, Aoka informs them that Kotono already tried something similar in the past, and Arata took the blame, which caused him to get called a creep by them. That makes Seiha realize that their father's announcement about them not being blood-related gave Kotono the impulse to want to have Arata's taboo babies. Banri calms them down, saying that they shouldn't jump to any conclusions yet. She reveals that she talked with their father after his announcement, and when they ask her what she talked about, she tells them that she wanted to find out her background, and finds that, as an orphan, they never knew Banri's parents' whereabouts or who they are. She suggests that they should keep it low profile and keep an eye on them, which everyone agrees to. Then, on their way to the merchandise store, some of the girls are fired up, wanting to get themselves action figures. When he sees how Kotono is acting, Arata feels relieved to see her act normal, like usual. He knows how their father's announcement took them all by surprise, but is happy to see that they are still hanging out like normal, and he's convinced that nothing will ever change between them. At that moment, a fireworks show starts and they enjoy it together, as siblings. Later, while the others are buying merchandise, Arata sees a girl who looks like Lala and gets nervous for a second. Uka pops up seeing him nervous and invites him to walk with her. She talks about how weird it feels to know that they are not actual twins. But Arata stops her thought process, saying how she will always be his twin, even when they're not. After hearing that, Uka talks about how in the past they believed that they could use telepathy as twins, and that they knew how each other thought all the time. It makes Arata flustered hearing that, and he asks her why she suddenly brought that up. To his shock, Uka tells Arata that she loves him, making him realize that everything is about to change. Days before at school, Shion asked Arata if he had ever seen any of their sisters romantically, but instead of answering, Arata asked him why he asked that question. Shion explained that since they are no longer siblings, making offspring is no longer taboo, and that Kotono has even shot her shot at Arata. But Arata assured him that he had never seen his sisters romantically. However, in the present, after Uka confessed to him, he saw her as more than a sister, but a romantic partner. However, Uka expresses to Arata that she loves him platonically, which relieves him of his tension, and he is convinced that even if hell freezes over, Uka would never see him as a romance candidate. He calls her a tsundere who plays hard to get, and she leaves him, reminding him to get her souvenirs. However, while he laughs it off, he recalls what Shion told him about seeing his sisters romantically and starts tweaking. Meanwhile, on her lonely walk, Uka can't forget what she just told Arata, and she realizes that she felt jealous of Kotono after Seiha told her how Kotono told Arata that she loved him. The next morning, Arata is spending his time working out at the home gym, building his chiseled, lady-folding abs, when Minami pops in and wants to join him. He expresses his excitement about her joining the workout, but she tells him to tone it down due to it being the early morning. She praises him for never skipping training, and she reminds him how their father used to always train Arata to the bones in order to make him a leader. But Arata still fails to see how it was beneficial for him mentally. Arata also shows Minami respect for never missing training and fighting to become a future Olympian. And while she brushes off his compliment, she blushes heavily. Unbeknownst to Arata the night before when the girls are at the souvenir shop, they realize that Uka and Arata were missing, so Minami went to look for them. To her shock, she heard Uka telling Arata that she loved him. And ever since then, Minami has been stressing over how she could confront Arata about that incident, not wanting to be their children's aunt anytime soon. While she is thinking hard, Arata tells him to stop lazing around. So Minami quickly does some dumbbell flies to pretend like everything is fine, but Arata tells her that her form is trash. After gathering her bravery, she asks Arata if something happened between him and Uka, but not knowing what she's referring to, Arata assures her that while he fights with Uka a lot, they are always extremely tight with each other, which is something that Minami doesn't want to hear at that moment, knowing what happened between them. She then leaves the room, not able to contain the pressure on her shoulders and not knowing what to do with the situation. Later, after finishing the workout, Arata heads to the bathroom, thinking about what Minami just said to him regarding the relationship between him and Uka. Suddenly, when Arata opens the bathroom door, Seiha is there, wearing the last of her plot armors, and while Arata is flustered, Seiha couldn't care less. She talks about how they are experiencing what a lot of rom-com anime MCs go through, but unlike them, Seiha doesn't punch Arata to the moon. When Arata tries to close the door, he sees that Seiha's clothes are blocking it from closing, so he is forced to pick them up and put them in the laundry basket that is inside the bathroom, while preventing himself from looking at Seiha in the shower. When he does look at her showering, he realizes that Seiha doesn't act any differently compared to before, unlike himself, who carries degenerate thoughts. He notices Seiha's ring, the one that their mother left for them, and asks her if it finally fits her. She tells him that it's a bit loose, but she refuses to let go due to her memory of her mother. Later, while alone in his room, Banri knocks on Arata's door asking to come in. When she does, she starts teasing him for having such a clean and tidy room, reminding him of all the times their father would scold him for making a mess on the bedroom floor. He asks her why she's here and she chit-chats around him, saying how she only wanted to visit his room. However, she casually snoops around his laptop, asking if he has any spicy videos, and to his surprise, Bonri reads the title of one of his limited edition Mia Khalifa videos. But he quickly grabs his laptop away from her, asking how she opened his password. To his embarrassment, it turns out the title can be seen on his email notifications and that she didn't need to put in any passwords. While Areta is embarrassed, Bonri expresses how she is actually relieved to know that his brother is a cultured man who enjoys Johnny Sins and Mia Khalifa videos. Just then, she invites Arata to go on a date with her. The next day, on their date, she takes him to a phone store, knowing that Arata has wanted to upgrade his phone for a long time, and he feels happy with her gesture. However, she starts teasing him, saying how they should go to a hotel afterward and do hot yoga until the sun goes up and down. Then, when Arata chooses his new phone, he chooses it quickly and efficiently. And when Banri asks him why he chose quickly, Arata expresses how he doesn't care about the design that much. Just then, Banri starts yapping about how people choose their phones like their partners, and that if someone chooses their phones only for their features, that means that someone prefers personality over appearance. However, Bonri believes that looks do matter, as if one day Arata were to get an annoying lover, at least he could still look at her pretty face instead of an ugly pig. Then, the saleswoman brings the phone, and when she spots Bonri beside Arata, she offers them a couple's deal to get a huge discount. While Arata wants to decline, Bonri pretends to be his lover, saying that they will take the deal, but he quickly declines. Afterward, Arata wonders why Bonri suddenly took him out on a date, but his thought process is stopped when Bonri sees an ice cream stand. After getting the ice cream, she reminds him of the time they all fought over an ice cream incident, and Arata remembers how Minami accidentally ate Kotono's ice cream. But because Kotono was too reserved, Uka stood up for her against Minami, which started a fight between all the siblings. However, because she was too scared of confrontations, Kotono always hid in the closet whenever she was sad, which granted her the name the Closet Fairy from her sisters. It reminds Arata of how Banri used to be scared of the supernatural, but she tells him to shut his mouth, as the idea of Casper the friendly ghost being freaky from behind her still scares her. Just then, Bonri asks Arata if anything happened, assuring him that, as his big sister, she will have his back, and he assures her that everything is okay. Meanwhile, Kotono is in her room, looking at the pictures they took on the birthday trip, but when he sees Arata in the picture, she can't help but stare at him a bit longer. Suddenly, she gets a message from Banri in the sisters' group chat, showing how she's on a date with Arata, eating ice cream, and while that makes Kotono extremely jealous, she stops herself from going too far and instead saves the picture. Back on the date, Bonri asks Arata to continue the date, which surprises him, but suddenly she reads a message intensely on her phone and tells Arata that she needs to go somewhere as soon as possible. Before she leaves, Arata tells her that she should go on a date with a proper boyfriend next time, and while Bonri blushes from cheek to cheek, she teases her brother, telling him not to get carried away. When she leaves, everyone she passes stares at her, refusing to believe someone so beautiful exists. Then, Bonri calls Minami, telling her that she couldn't get Arata to open up about what happened between him and Uka, even after the date they just went on. However, Minami still refuses to believe that nothing happened, still convinced that Uka told Arata that she loved him, so she sends a message to Bonri, expressing how she must have misheard about Uka telling Arata that she loves him. Suddenly, she notices that she sent the message to the sisters' group chat, so she quickly deleted the message, praying to the anime gods that no one saw it. Just then, Uka pops up in the bathroom, asking that she gets her turn to bathe, and while Minami was initially nervous, she feels relieved to know that Uka didn't read the message. However, unbeknownst to Minami, Kotono saw the message before it as deleted, and she couldn't believe that she now has a love rival. Later, they have dinner together, and when Arata looks at Seiha, who's brooding, he can't help but notice that she looks like she has had issues for a while. Then he runs into her while she's alone, and while he initially ignores her, he ends up asking her if she is okay. To his surprise, it turns out that Seiha has been meaning to play Twister, and since Arata asked, she takes him to play with her. He asks her why she wanted to play Twister all of a sudden, and she informs him that after her visit to his room, she has been having degenerate thoughts about him, so she needs to find out if she actually wants to bump bellies with him. Arata wants to refuse to play, but when Seiha reminds him of who helped him during his test, he folds and agrees to play Twister with her. When the game starts, Arata begins the game by purposefully staying away from Seiha to avoid contact, but since that won't answer Seiha's questions, she purposefully tries to get closer, hoping to get a reaction out of herself so she can see whether she wants him. They continue for a few more rounds when Seiha mentions how Arata is still being hesitant, so the next round, she purposefully puts herself in a position that would make most men bark for some roast beef. It gets Arata to almost start drooling, and he declares that he forfeits, but Seiha doesn't allow him to back off, so he forcefully continues the game. In the next round, Arata has to put his foot in the color blue, which is directly under Seiha. He tries his best to be careful, but still ends up bumping her rice cakes anyway, which makes him malfunction because of how soft they are. Just then, Seiha starts yapping about the humans' hormones, and she explains how humans have both dopamine, which is released when they win something, and oxytocin, which is released when a person wants to do hot yoga with someone. She questions at what point she switches from dopamine to oxytocin when she's with Arda, whom she sees as someone who can make her kitty purr. Just then, she gets into a peculiar position that Mia Khalifa usually gets into, which, in that moment, makes Arata wish that he were Johnny Sins. He starts tweaking, but suddenly Seiha loses her strength and drops her rice cakes on Arata's body, saying that her muscles gave up. Arata can't believe that he felt her own sister's rice cakes on him, but to Seiha's relief, she tells Arata that she didn't feel any plotful thoughts towards him during the game, which means that she can continue her life like normal. When Seiha leaves, she thanks Arata for his help, which leaves him frustrated, wondering what kind of BS just happened. Just then, Uka pops up after hearing his frustration, and she asks him to join her later for a game session. It makes Arata wonder why Uka would suddenly ask him to play games with her alone. And he assumes that it's because she just really wants to play games with him. He still remembers how Uka would put him in submission holds whenever she lost to him, but what bothers him more is how she told him that she loved him out of the blue. They start playing the game, where Uka plays with excitement, like it's the best game in the world, while Arata plays calmly. Just then, being too excited, she leans onto his leg and Arata realizes that she doesn't realize that she's sticking to him, but when he sees the bright smile she has on her face, he can't help but see her as his adorable little sister. While Uka manages to defeat Arata for the first few rounds, Arata gets into the zone and defeats her again and again, leaving her devastated by the number of losses she has to him. Just then, she tells him that she needs to go to the bathroom, but when she gets behind him, she puts him in a chokehold like the old days. During it, Arata starts begging her to let go, saying how both he and his character in-game are dying, but what worries him most is the fact that she has her plots sticking on his body, and him trying his best not to wake up the beast. Having had enough of her BS, Arata uses his raw strength to turn the situation around, and pins Uka down on the floor, saying that he was hurt. However, he just realizes the position he is in, and when he looks down, he sees that Uka is gazing at him like prey being caught by a lion. She mentions how he's a man now, and it takes him by surprise to hear that. She quickly leaves the room, realizing that she doesn't stand a chance against Arata, and deep down she wishes that Arata would go to town on her. It leaves Arata confused about what just happened, questioning what she meant by calling him a real man. And out of fatigue, he decides to go to bed, but unbeknownst to him, Kotona was in the room next door, listening to the whole thing. The next day, the siblings continue their day at school as usual, and at the end of the day, their father calls up Arata for a father-son talk. He first asks Arata if the siblings are okay after the big announcement, to which Arata tells him that they have become more expressive since the announcement. But to Arata's surprise, the father asks him if he has found his special someone. Meanwhile, the girls are watching a romantic series together, where the guy proposes to his special someone on a bridge. While Banri sees it as romantic for a guy to profess their love in the wild, Uka feels the ick seeing a girl getting a proposal in the wild like a bum. They ask Uka what her ideal situation is, and she expresses how she would love to be proposed to by a rich alpha in an expensive restaurant using $1 million ring. Seiha tells her that she should lay off the henny, and when she gets asked the same question, Seiha expresses how she would love to marry someone who already has everything figured out, starting from how many children they will have to how many hot yoga sessions a week. However, Minami completely shits down the topic by saying that what truly matters is not the place or the circumstances, but it's the person who proposes to them, which they all wholeheartedly agree. As they are walking back to their rooms, Kotono is slowly losing control over her emotions, and when she loses it, to everyone's shock, she declares to them how she is in love with Arata. Banri tries to calm her down, understanding that she loves him as a brother, but Kotono once again declares to make it clear that she loves Arata and wants to marry him. After everything she saw, she declares that every single one of her sisters is her rival, and she's not intending to lose. Back with Arata, his father expresses how he's worried that Arata might not have a wife as the future heir of the family, and out of curiosity, he asks his father what made him choose their mother. He initially jokes by saying that he fell in love with her creamy plots, but ends up confessing that he was weakly in love with their mother's powerful, bright soul. Arata asks him why they only have one picture of her, and the father tells him how truly beautiful people don't like to be in photos. He asks Arata if he remembers the secretive 8th room in the house, and Arata tells him that he and the others, who still haven't been inside that room, used to believe that it's a room to get them to an isekai. Arata tells his father that while he believes that the father had a reason to reveal the truth just recently, he believes that they will work through it and that he's proud to be his oldest son. As the future heir of the family, Arata tells his father that he will always look over his siblings and ensure that they will all have a happy life. When Arata leaves, the father looks at the picture of his wife and expresses to her how proud he is to have adopted Arata as his son. Comment down below, Sister Twister, if you finished the video. Next week, we will be back with a new recap of the latest episode. Subscribe so you don't miss the next video.